Hello and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining me for the webinar, Social Distancing and Stress, and how we can manage work life, and home learning during this time where we're all trying to manage the challenges of living in the time of COVID-19. My name is Dr. Maribel Del Rio-Roberts, and I am an associate professor in the Department of Human Services at the Abraham Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice at Nova Southeastern University. And I had the pleasure of being affiliated with the Masters in Developmental Disabilities. So one of the things as a licensed psychologist in the field, particularly during this time of COVID-19, I do get a lot of questions about how do I manage the stress that is affecting me and my family during this time, because we're all impacted in some way. Our routines have changed, the way that we communicate with people has changed, how we connect, how we do business, how we educate our children, and how we work. So these are all challenges or changes that could potentially create some stress. So my job in working with children and families is to really try to provide some guidance and some strategies to try to navigate this process in order to make it a little more manageable and a little less stressful. So this is the fourth webinar that is being offered by NSU's Division of Advancement and Community Relations. And it's really done as a resource for alumni, for supporters of the university, and for community members as well to gain information, because as NSU, as an NSU faculty member, I know that NSU highly values community engagement. And so this video now is being streamed through Facebook Live as well, and will be available as a resource online through the NSU Alumni Association page as well. So I want to start with a quick presentation, and then after the presentation, we're going to have a question and answer session where you can feel free to type in any questions throughout the webinar as we go along, and then we are going to answer them towards the end. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that we always strive for and we talk about is this idea of balance. And sometimes when we're able to separate different areas of our lives, our work lives, from our family lives, from our school lives, it becomes maybe a little bit easier to try to separate these and obtain some sort of balance. However, what happens when those boundaries are now mixed and muddled? And so we have to strive to try to figure out, how do we manage everything and how do we get it done? So balance is really, no better than time management. It's not really how to manage your time, but how to manage your boundaries. And how do we make choices that help us enjoy the choices that we're making and enjoy the time that we're spending on the activities and tasks that we need to get done. So, during this particular time, there's a lot of uncertainty. And, whether it's the economic pressures of losing a job, or maybe not having accessible childcare for us if we have essential jobs where we are required to leave the home, or even to get a considerable amount of work done while trying to manage the demands of our children and our families, it does create and it does generate, an emotional toll because we are pulled in so many different directions. And so it's really a question that I think we are all trying to navigate, particularly as working parents. We might be trying to kind of figure out, where does that balance lie? So, our lives have changed, but we still need to get things done. If we're fortunate enough to still have our jobs, we need to get our jobs done. If we have children that are in school, how do we help them successfully complete the assignments and to provide instruction for them while still allowing for time for hobbies and exercise and family time. And so it's something that a lot of people have been struggling with. And so when it comes to this idea of getting it all done, and we have to do this all within kind of the confines of our home, it can be a bit overwhelming. I know that sometimes I try to figure out, how do I get all of it done? And so, it was hard in and of itself prior to being in the current situation with the pandemic. So balance does become a little bit more tricky during these times. But I think one of the first places to start when we think about this idea of getting all things done is to accept that this is the new normal for now. So it is temporary and it's not something that necessarily is going to be permanent, but it has reshaped our lives in a variety of different ways. So how do we accept that this is the new normal? Well, by trying to manage our fears and stress. So if we are constantly questioning or uncertain about what will happen next or worried about what tomorrow brings, it's going to become much more difficult for us to manage our emotions and our feelings. So really trying to focus on the present day and taking things one step at a time or one day at a time is something that can help when it comes to what is my agenda and my priority for the day, and really making it into a family decision. So there is a lot of uncertainty about health, about finances, and it's important that if you have a support system, someone that you can bring into your unit or as part of your unit to help you sort some of these details out, it's important to seek that out, whether it's a spouse or a significant other or a family member, to really kind of unite and come together to try to figure out what the best solutions are, and how you can support each other. It is hard to balance these things. And I can say, sometimes we have to tag team. So if I have a meeting and my kids have to complete a school assignment, then my spouse is able to jump in and take over and help support me in that way. And it does take some stress off my plate. So I think the more that you can identify what the priorities are for each person on that given day, it does help to alleviate some stress. So how do we actually get some of this balance or trying to kind of get it all done or manage everything? And one particular thing that's important is to try to schedule working hours. So if you are a working professional or you're attending school and completing your schoolwork, setting some sort of working hours. Because having some structure does help us increase our efficiency and our productivity, but also not being so rigid where you can't deviate from those hours. And sometimes what has been helpful is to incorporate staggering breaks. So scheduling work hours, let's say between 9 and 5 or 9 and 6, and then working in chunks during that period of time to allow you the flexibility that if you need to attend to an older adult that maybe you're a caregiver for, or to a child that maybe needs help with schoolwork or other things, that you're giving yourself the opportunity to feel like you're making progress on your work responsibilities, but also being there for those that are important to you as well. And so also scheduling in and creating time for downtime. So a lot of us now, because we don't have the boundaries of going into the office and leaving the office when we're done with work and trying to set boundaries in that regard, sometimes the boundaries are blurred. And so we also have to set time and schedule time for downtime. So saying, I'm done with work today at 6 o'clock, and I am not going to work again until maybe catch up with something at 8 or 9, or until the next day if I feel very tired. So definitely scheduling downtime is important so that you prevent burnout. Because if we're constantly feeling like we're just trying to keep our heads above water, then that can definitely lead to feelings of stress. discussing your work schedule with others. So on a regular basis or sometimes on a day-to-day basis, trying to decide, well, what are the main things that I need to accomplish within my workday, and talking to your parent or a spouse or other person that is maybe a support system, and figuring out how we can support each other in that process. So I need your help from 10 to 1, and then I'll support you in the late afternoon. And that helps not only provide assistance and support, but it also helps create accountability. So if you have coworkers that maybe you rely on, or you work together as a team, it does help to keep each other accountable. Creating a morning routine is also important. So trying to wake up at regular times, getting out of your pajamas in the morning and changing into a different set of clothes and trying to have breakfast at the same time also helps to increase focus and productivity. And establishing a dedicated workspace. So, and it should be a space away from where you sleep and relax. So it could be the kitchen table, or it could be the patio outside, wherever it is that you feel that you're most productive, but try to not necessarily try to work on while sitting on your bed, because you're more likely to feel groggy and sleepy and fatigued and feel less productive. And then plan your day and make to-do lists. What are the most important things that I want to accomplish for the day? And setting SMART goals. So setting attainable, realistic, measurable goals that you can keep track of, so that you can keep on ensure accountability. So what are some other tips that potentially could be of assistance? Well, definitely taking regular breaks. And when we're taking these breaks, trying to limit how much time we're spending on social media or watching the news, because all of this information does tend to increase the experience of anxiety and depression for a lot of people. And so trying to stick to a particular maybe news network and limiting the amount of time, whether you want to get caught up in the morning or in the late afternoon and see what's going on, and then deciding to shut it off is going to be an important step. Prioritizing social interactions is also really important. Scheduling time to catch up with others. So if I feel that I'm constantly just focused on my work and I feel isolated from other people, because maybe I'm not the type of person that has to participate in a lot of meetings where I can have that type of exchange or interaction, it's important for you to set some time aside to engage in social interactions and networking. Remembering to get exercise. And I know this can be a difficult one, particularly in this time, since we're now expected to remain close to our homes. But even if it's going for a short walk, in your neighborhood, or taking some virtual exercise classes, these are all things that are helpful in terms of releasing stress and anxiety and releasing energy. And it does help improve focus and productivity. And as I mentioned, marking the end of your workday and knowing when to stop work is really important. And not being too hard on yourself. Sometimes we have a tendency to feel that we need to, there's more expected of me because I have less competing demands. I'm not in the office and I'm not maybe pulled into so many different activities. But it's important to set realistic expectations. And if you can accomplish 3 important things throughout the day, then consider that to be a success. And for me, it might be 3, but for another person, it might be 2, depending on the nature of the activities that you're completing and carrying out. So as myself, I'm sure a lot of you are also going through the adjustment period of trying to support our children with home learning. And this is a task that is new for a lot of us because most of us haven't homeschooled or worked as a teacher. And, it can be extremely stressful because we feel almost a pressure that we have to try to provide our kids with the same amount of time of instruction or the same quality of instruction that they're receiving in school. But it's important that we set realistic expectations, not only for ourselves in what we can deliver and how much we can facilitate, but for our children. So particularly expecting our children to work on their schoolwork for 6 hours straight might not be reasonable. And I think, schools and teachers, if you're getting, some direct instruction and guidance from schools, are doing a better job, I think, at scaling back and trying to figure out and assess what's a reasonable amount of work. But definitely allow your child to tackle what they can, but then allow them to maybe take breaks and come back to it later or the next day. And it is important, particularly with learning, because stress in children, anxiety and worries do affect academic outcomes. So it is important that we do try to talk to our children about the situation and COVID-19. Some parents, and depending on the age of the child, it might not be appropriate, but most school-age children realize that their lives have changed and they know that there are things that are being done differently, and they have all sorts of questions and anxieties just like adults do. And so tailoring the level of information, but having a clear discussion about this is something that's important, and be remaining truthful and continuing to provide guidance is going to be important, but having that transparency where they don't feel that it's a topic that's off limits or that they can't ask questions. Because we do want them to be as successful as possible. And it is very stressful for them to feel that they're missing out. They're missing their teachers and missing their friends. Some of them are missing important activities, school plays that they've been working on, or participation in clubs or other graduation ceremonies. And there is a sense of grief and loss that's associated with that. So trying to be patient and trying to, meet them where they are is also going to be important. And there are some materials, if you want to support your child in the home learning process, if you're not getting necessarily a lot of guidance or strategies, that can particularly be of assistance. Especially the Learning Scientist is a good resource that helps you, provides guidance to parents on how to help their children be successful within the home learning environment. So how do we balance that role of being a parent and being a teacher? And the first step is to remember that the parent-child relationship comes first. So almost thinking of it, you're not their teacher. They have a special relationship with their teacher, but rather seeing yourself more so in the role of facilitator than teacher. And that if the child is feeling stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed by their academic work or their responsibilities, or just not being able to leave the house and participate in activities and things that they enjoy, to meet them where they're at and to really focus on that parent-child relationship first. And butting heads with our kids, sometimes it's inevitable. We have lots of different competing demands that we're all trying to juggle. But it's important to back up on pushing the academics to the point that it's going to increase the anxiety and feelings of isolation or sadness that your child might be experiencing. So recognizing what your child can tolerate is going to be really important. And children are really more willing to accept their parents in the role of a teacher if they feel secure in that relationship. So in order to adopt this homeschool mindset, if you're not getting a lot of direction from teachers or from the schools, if they haven't implemented a formal learning plan or instructional plan, there are lots of free websites that are available, including Khan Academy, Lalilo, Epic, that have now, are no longer requiring any sort of fees, where you can utilize these as supplementary or primary instructional tools for your child. And also to think about that not all instruction has to be always that formal. So it can be something just as simple as watching documentaries together and talking about them, or creating art and music together, or maybe practicing a language, a foreign language, with someone in the family or a friend that can speak the language, and maybe doing that over FaceTime or remotely. So it's really important to continue to incorporate the interests and likes of the child into the learning process. And always remember that play, even unstructured play, helps children develop and learn. And allowing the child to play creatively actually is not time wasted, but it's another learning experience for the child. And depending on the age of our child, the way that they play may be different, but children need that time to be able to consolidate not only the information that they're learning, but also to consolidate all of their feelings and experiences. So some strategies to support students in the home learning environment, and some of these may work for your child and some may not. It really depends on each individual family, but it is important to build new routines. So when our children are generally going to school, they, sorry about that, they generally have a specific routine that they follow. But it's important that they build new routines during this time of home learning. So maybe creating a visual schedule for them, something that like what I have pictured here to help them kind of know what comes next. When they're at school, they have a routine. They know they do math and then they do science and then they do reading and then they go to recess and lunch. And so it helps decrease anxiety and ambiguity if they know what to expect throughout their day. And again, this is just a guide. You don't have to necessarily stick to these times rigidly, but really just kind of having some sort of schedule. Maybe there might not be a time associated. It might just be the first activity of the day will be breakfast and then learning and then lunch and then recess, just so that they know what to expect. Continuing to foster connections from a distance. And I know a lot of extracurricular activities are now doing these types of things where they're allowing people to participate or children to participate, whether it's Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops, or whether it's athletic teams, or lots of different clubs. They are utilizing technological platforms to have children remain in contact with one another and to still in some way participate in these activities that they enjoy. And if they have the ability to reach out to friends or family members through either phone or FaceTime text, that type of thing, it will be really important. But it's still important though to keep a close eye on changing behaviors. If you notice any changes in your child's behavior, whether it's increased irritability, excessive worry, and you've tried to talk to the child about it and try to see ways to make them more comfortable and it doesn't go away, then at that point you might want to reach out to a healthcare professional, as many are now offering telehealth sessions in order to gain some more specific guidance. And these are just some additional strategies, supporting understanding, offering opportunities for expression. We've talked a little bit. Prioritize coping and calming skills. So choosing a time of the day for learning when the child is most calm. So sometimes parents feel they need to wake their child up at 7 in the morning and get them started right away. Well, some children really aren't morning people. They're forced to go to school early, but maybe that's not when they're most optimally alert or cooperative. So figuring out not only what is a good time that works for them, but works with your work schedule is also going to be important. And trying to maintain some sort of sleep and wake routines, and incorporating household chores will also be helpful. Social emotional learning is also important to continue to incorporate, and these things can be done, very kind of in support of the academic curriculum, just reinforcing appropriate behavior and providing lots of verbal praise, because some of the new tasks in managing technology might be challenging for some of our students. So really just reinforcing any appropriate behavior is helpful. Encouraging cooperation and absolutely encouraging emotional expression. And there are a couple of suggestions that I included, which include abracadabra and what to do when mistakes make you quake. And based on the age of the child, these are good resources that you can refer to help support that social emotional learning. Stress, we are all everyone to a certain extent worries about finances, right? And depending, when we're in a time of uncertainty where lots of businesses and jobs are threatened or lost, there are always things that we worry about, no matter what your status is. So really not knowing what's going to happen even for well-off people, is common. So try to put, more focus on the fact of controlling what you can control, and really focusing on, not taking any uncertain risks monetarily, and knowing your emotional triggers. If going on TV and listening to the number of people that are now unemployed, and how terrible the economy is at this point is something that triggers you, I would definitely stay away from that. So knowing what your tolerance is, knowing what your triggers are, and not taking unnecessary risks is important for managing financial stress. And ultimately taking care of yourself. Self-care is so important because, again, now we are juggling so many different roles. And how do we really take the time to focus on providing ourselves with some sort of self-care so that we don't burn out? And one of the things that I find helpful for positive coping is sharing things that you're grateful for. So one thing can be, I'm grateful that my family is healthy, or I'm grateful for the friends and family that are supporting me right now, or that I get to go to the grocery store, and that I can even cook you dinner if you need me to. But reaching out to our support systems, such as family or neighbors, is also important to see if they need help. And that tends to provide us with a sense of satisfaction, which helps manage, a lot of the negative feelings we could be experiencing. And ultimately showing compassion. Everyone is in a different situation. Everyone's circumstances are different, and we all have different things that we're dealing with, and being sensitive to the fact that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we all have our own unique particular challenges. And showing compassion to those that might be struggling, whether it's just lending a supportive ear, or whether it's offering to go grocery shopping for an elderly neighbor or family member, or donating something, a snack to your local, writing a thank you note to your mail carrier, or whatever it is. I think that definitely also helps improve our coping. And try to focus ultimately on what you can control. There's so much that's out of our control, in certain situations, particularly in the situation of COVID-19, that it's important to focus on what you can control and mentally prepare yourself for each day, and prioritize your own mental health. If you do have, if you are the type of person that benefits from therapy, and have participated in therapy in the past, you see a professional, continuing to do so is important. And if you think you could benefit, then reaching out is also going to be important. So again, focusing on what I can control, when the world does feel scary, and how much media intake I consume is something that you can control. And how I respond to the fears of others is something you can control. And what my hygiene practices are is something you can control as well. And how much I'm thinking of myself versus everyone else, and remembering to make the most informed decisions that you can for yourself and your family, and doing the best that you can, because I think we're all doing the best that we can. So I would like to now give the opportunity, if you all have questions, for me to go ahead and answer some of those. So I do see there are a few questions, and someone asked and said that they have a hard time with the feeling of having to use this time at home productively to reach their goals and finish all pending projects. What do you recommend to manage such pressure that some of us feel even outside of work hours? And I think that's a great question, because we almost feel like we have to be much as productive or more productive than we normally are, and we're stretching ourselves thin. And I think really chunking the amount of work that we're doing, and whether it's maybe getting up a little bit earlier in the mornings, or maybe setting some time aside in the evenings if we feel we really need to catch up on a project, but really thinking about, okay, what do I absolutely need to accomplish for the day, and what can wait till tomorrow? And what will happen if I don't necessarily complete these other tasks? Is anyone else going to be negatively impacted? Or is it just something that can sit on my desk or in my inbox and I can get to tomorrow? So as long as it's not something that is going to have an immediate impact on other people, oftentimes just prioritizing what is the urgency of whatever it is that you need to get done is going to be a way to do that. Someone else asked, you know, if your child is missing baseball season, go outside and throw the ball with them. Help them connect with their coach and team. If they're missing their prom, host a prom at their house. Reconnect with your kids. It's definitely a time to do that. So if you have the time and the capacity to recreate some of these experiences for your child, you know, I know a lot of parents are now having mini proms at home in order to help their child feel that they're not missing out on some of these monumental, really significant, important life events. But other things can be really important too, like participation in season and sporting events or other things that they've been working towards. And ultimately, there will be some sort of sense of loss, even when we try our best to provide our children with these experiences that mimic their actual you know, whatever they were going to pursue. They will still feel a sense of loss in that they didn't get to do or participate in the things that they wanted to do. And that's okay. And normalizing that for them and allowing them to express that and not feeling that they just have to kind of accept it and move on is also going to be important. Then there's another question that mentioned, what should you do if your child is worried about missing school-related events? And again, you know, we still want to provide our children with a little bit of a sense of hope, since we're not exactly sure yet, you know, what the rest of the school year holds definitively. But we do want to start preparing our child little by little for the possibility that this might not take place, and think about and focus on all the positive things that they were able to enjoy, things that did go on during the school year, and what potential future opportunities there might be to either make these activities up or to engage in them in the future. But definitely normalizing and not dismissing and allowing them to talk about it or draw, you know, what they're feeling is going to be helpful. Oh, sure. You wanted me to show. Okay. I'm not sure I can go back given our amount of time, but this recording will be, this chat or this webinar is being recorded and will be available to you all through the Alumni Association site. So you will be able to access that. How do I know when I should reach out to a healthcare professional for myself or a child? If you notice any significant changes in your child's behavior, something that is different, and we might experience, and it's okay for you to notice a difference, an increased sense of worry or an increased sense of kind of a little bit of, you know, hypersensitivity during this time, because they are trying to understand and manage and deal with these things to the same capacity that we adults are. But if it's starting to interfere with your child's ability to do the things that they enjoy, if they like to spend time on the computer, or they like playing with their toys or playing outside, and you start to see a significant change from that where they no longer want to engage in these activities, or their sleeping and eating habits change in a way that's negatively affecting them, or they are so overwhelmed with negative emotions that they don't know what to do or how to cope with that, then it would be time, I would suggest, to reach out to a healthcare professional. And does NSU have local mental health services that they offer to the students? We do, as we have, with our collaboration through Henderson Behavioral Health, we have our student counseling center that does provide our active students, our current students, with counseling sessions free of charge. And so I would highly encourage any of our students that maybe just need someone to talk to and, you know, cope, to learn a little bit of coping skills, or just to, you know, vent about how, you know, the uncertainty of the current situation. I would encourage them to reach out. And we also have our community mental health center that's open to the community, that is managed and by the College of Psychology, and we also have our family therapy clinic that also provides these services to the community on a regular. Generally, they were providing them live. We no longer have that, but if once we reopen, if it's something that, you know, as a community member, you feel you or your child could benefit from, that would be a good resource. But the services offered through NSU Counseling, through Henderson Behavioral Health, are completely free of charge and being offered virtually for our students. So yes, you will definitely get everything available to you through the recording, and you can go through it and access all of the references. And I would be happy to, if you have any additional questions, and if you would like to reach out, my contact information is on this slide. Please feel free to do so. Email right now is the best way to get a hold of me, or you can also check out our website, educationnova.edu, and that will also give you a link to my contact information as well if you're not able to locate it. So I appreciate all of your time, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this talk. And again, I think one of the things that's really important is to stay positive and to continue to instill hope and to focus on the things that we can control. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.